From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thank you, Ollie Barrett.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Welcome to the program. Are you well? It's been a dull but pretty warm afternoon in Salford, in Greater Manchester, the dirty old town. It's just me and you today. I've been spoiling you with guests, of course, of late. But today it's just you and me. I had a late cancellation. It's just you and me. And I've got plenty to talk to you about anyway. Plenty we can discuss, you and me. Tweet me right now. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. I'll be reading your tweets out as I go along, as I always say. And most of the time do. Indeed. It is Wednesday's programme. It is June 10th. And it is the year of our Lord 2020. Yes. I very, 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 very rarely look at the comments that appear under the YouTube videos. I'm not too bothered about what people think. You might think that's a bit arrogant. You might think, well, you should care, Richie. It's not like that. It's just I've been in the old business, you know, for a long time. And whether people say nice things or not so nice things, I tend to treat those two imposters just the same. I don't care one way or another. But I did today have a look. And lately, and I wonder if it's got anything to do with COVID, but lately a lot of people are imploring me, and I'm not taking the piss out of them, I'm not, imploring me to accept the Lord Jesus Christ as my personal saviour. Nice comments now. Not at all condescending. I'm not being sarcastic either. You can never tell with my voice, you know. I'm told reliably. So, yeah, quite a few people lately saying, Richie, accept that the Lord Jesus Christ is your personal saviour and it's going to be better for you in the long run. So thanks for those of you who worry about my soul and where it might be going at the end of this journey of madness. I really appreciate that. I've graduated to agnosticism from atheism. That should make you happy. You can't win everything. You can't have it all your own way. Anyway, before we go any further, let me read a letter to the editor. Oh yeah, I don't get too many of those. I don't get too many well-formulated and well-thought-out letters of complaint. I get a lot of abusive emails which are very funny. And if I was to be reading those out, I'd be here all day long. But I've had a really good email coming from Florida. Let me read it. Richie, I'm a long-time fan. An old attorney in Florida who liked and respected you and your show before it was cool. It isn't cool. It isn't cool today, let alone yesterday. And listen, let's drop the terminology fan. We don't have any fans. We don't hero worship people. We shouldn't do that. But anyway, I'll shut up and I'll read it. How do you do that? I liked your show before it was cool. I listened to you to get the European perspective because you must always listen to the locals who actually dig in the dirt to know what will grow there. Anyway, I'm on your side, but you're wrong about the Reverend Al Sharpton. I'm a local digging in the dirt here, and I tell you that Sharpton is not less concerned with George Floyd's funeral and more concerned with his own promotion and public image. Allow me to explain, Richie. Trump, a Hitler-like narcissistic personality disorder madman, if ever there was one, is less concerned with anything and is solely concerned with his own promotion and public image. For Trump, it's fun/essential to grab the celebrity spotlight, to fly to the G7, G20 and state dinners with the Queen of England on a personalised 747, to partake of the finest fare of the finest china and crystal, all while destroying everything and insulting everyone, especially those who dare to refuse to kiss the Mad King's ring. By contrast, Sharpton attends funerals, seemingly countless funerals, and consoles families in their worst moments. Sure, some of it is on TV, but this is not a roast at the Friars Club. The inescapable truth is this: Reverend Sharpton does the dirty work that no one else wants to do. I wish you continued success, good health, and a clear wit. And that's from Joe Kalmbach in Florida. Thanks very much, Joe. I really appreciate that. That's the final word on Al Sharpton then. I stand corrected. Now, Jesus, would you look at the time? It's already 9 minutes past 5. Now, the UK is likely to be the hardest hit country of the major economies because of the lockdown. Who says that? Well, the OECD says it, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. They've been speaking today. It has been speaking today and says the UK is fooked. It's fooked. The economy is likely to slump by 11.5% this year, outstripping Germany, France, Spain and Italy, according to the OECD. And we've been warned, if there was a second peak in the pandemic requiring further lockdown, the economy could contract by as much as 14%. This isn't funny. The crisis will cast a long shadow over the world, the OECD added today. Not good, is it? The latest assessment, its latest assessment found that the UK's largely service-based economy meant that it had been particularly badly hit by the government's lockdown restrictions. The services sector, including financial services, hospitality and tourism, makes up about 3/4 of the UK's GDP. It's dreadful. Financial services, tourism and hospitality. It's no joke. We've been banging on about this on this programme for the last 3 months. Listen to the economist Liam Halligan. He's speaking today with Julia Hartley-Brewer on her talk radio show. Liam Halligan, and it is grim.
We're already at 9% unemployment in this country, and then there's all the furloughed people on top of that. So as the furlough scheme tapers down, and today is the day when it's the last day that employers can register new entrants for the furlough scheme, paying 80% of the state paying 80% of their wages. That then tapers down. It goes to from the 1st of August, the state employers have to pay national insurance and tax, and then it then falls to 70%, and then to 60% in October, with the state paying 60%. As the furloughing scheme tapers down, on top of that 9% of people unemployed, a lot of the furloughed people are then going to become unemployed. So we're going to have unemployment, even if, like, say, a third or a half only of the furloughed people are then unemployed. Employment in the mid to high teens, right?
Yeah.
This is these figures are astonishing. Now, I don't know about you, I haven't heard much about these unemployment numbers in the media. Certainly not the television news.
A very good point he makes there. No talk of this in the media. Why? Why is the media not talking about the tsunami of job losses on the horizon? Look out your window, you can see it. It's coming, and it's like a juggernaut. Shocking. What are we looking at?
News is absolutely insane. We're heading for the highest unemployment since the Great Depression.
Unemployment of maybe 15, 16, 17%. It's horrendous. And as for hospitality in the UK, 3.2 million people work in hospitality. 750,000 people work in pubs and bars. It's astonishing. Now, today being a Wednesday, Prime Minister's Questions takes place every Wednesday at Westminster. And the Conservative MP Peter Aldous had this question for Boris Johnson about pubs. And it's important.
Allowing zoos such as Africa Alive near Lowestoft to reopen from 15th June is very good news, as it provides them with a realistic chance of survival. Would the Prime Minister give full consideration to allowing beer gardens to also reopen from 15th June, as the feedback which I'm receiving is that many pubs are now facing the unpalatable and unwanted prospect of having to make staff redundant?
Prime Minister.
The massive redundancies coming in hospitality.
I thank my honourable friend very much, because he's absolutely right. We want to reopen hospitality as quickly as we possibly can. The House will remember that according to the roadmap, we were going to open outdoor hospitality no earlier than July the 4th. That is still the plan. We are sticking to our plan. And so guidance is now being developed for such hospitality. What we don't want to see is a roiling bacchanalian mass of people that can spread the disease. So it's very important that people understand the continuing risks that this country faces.
The continuing risks. July the 4th, pubs opening on July the 4th. If I ever needed any evidence that the Ireland, the romantic Ireland of W.B. Yeats, the Ireland that I grew up believing existed, even though it didn't exist, an Ireland of rebellious people, of free-thinking people, of real men and women. If I was ever under any illusion about it, well, the fact that they did that to the pubs and the hotels in my country, and there was absolutely nothing said about it, that Irish people didn't rear up about it, that publicans didn't rise up about it, it was all the evidence I needed that the Ireland I believed existed when I was growing up. And I was reading books about my heroes, the men and women who struggled for independence in my country. It's gone. Shocking. So the OECD says we're all fooked. Economists are saying, as Liam Halligan did, that we are fooked. And the Chancellor of the Exchequer is a guy called Rishi Sunak. He's Goldman Sachs' own. Yes, he is. It's a thing of beauty, you know. I say to people all the time, because I don't get offended easily, very thick skin. I do meet people from time to time. I do, it's true. And people do say to me, your show is very funny. A lot of old conspiratorial bollocks. It's in their faces. Rothschild's man in France. Goldman Sachs man in England in the Treasury. It's in their faces. So all of this is going on. Halligan says nobody in the UK mainstream media is talking about the tsunami of job losses and what that means for people. What it will mean for their health, for their families' health. And what does Sunak do? Well, with a big effing grin on his face, he outlines today a nightmarish vision of shopping in the future. Here he is speaking from John Lewis about what shops will look like when they reopen next week. This is, well, straight out of a science fiction film, this.
Last month, we set out a clear plan to reopen our country slowly, and today we're at the next stage of that plan, where next week we'll be able to open shops again in our country, and that's because we've met the 5 tests that we set out, and shops like this, John Lewis, have taken extraordinary steps to make sure that that experience is safe, both for their employees and for customers. Lots of new signs, distancing, screens, so I hope that when all these shops open, people should have the confidence to know that they can go out again in safety. And that's
I bet you upon hearing that they'll be racing to the shops. You know, racing to the shops, hearing his description of what the experience will be like.
And that's very important. I would say people should have the confidence to know that it is safe. If you look around a store like John Lewis today, they've taken extraordinary steps to make sure that experience is going to be safe for people. Limited number of people who can be in the store at any one time, one-way systems, lots of signage, distancing, a new process for returns. All of that creates a new shopping environment.
It'll be wonderful to go shopping, won't it, next week?
It won't be the same as what we were all used to. And it's an environment that means you can shop in confidence, knowing that it's going to be safe, it's going to keep you and your family safe from a health perspective.
I mean, I've never been one for shopping anyway. I don't have any time for it. I hate it. I'm typical of most blokes in the world. I haven't gone to a town centre with the oft-mentioned Caroline on a Saturday since about 2004. And it'll never happen again in my lifetime. Dreadful. But some people like it. They won't like it for much longer, will they? Dreadful, isn't it, what he outlined there, Sunak? How many people will want to go out and have that experience? You might think that what is left of the High Street in the UK, in our towns, in our cities, is for the birds. High streets have been under enormous pressure anyway from online retailers, which have been given all sorts of generous concessions, tax concessions, of course, by the UK government. While this was going on, by the way, today another 3,600 UK jobs were lost, gone. According to the BBC, the restaurant group Monsoon, Accessorize and Quiz announced the job losses through major restructures. 3,600 jobs gone just like that. Nothing for these people to go and do. Nothing else. And while all that's going on, the media today is urging you to celebrate the 72nd birthday of the NHS by going out on the streets and clapping next month, the 5th of July. Let's go and clap for the NHS and for our care workers and celebrate the NHS. It's 19 minutes past the hour. I'll be reading some of your tweets as we go along. As I mentioned, it's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Now, this has been, apart from the funeral of George Floyd, and apart from statue removals, one of the biggest stories being covered today, right across UK media, is news that Gone with the Wind, arguably the most famous movie of all time, has been taken off the HBO Max service after calls for it to be removed. HBO Max said that the 1939 film was a product of its time and it depicted ethnic and racial prejudices that were wrong then and are wrong today. The film will return, said HBO Max, at an unspecified time in the future, and when it does, there would be a discussion of its historical context. Do you know what Gone with the Wind is about? No? Have you seen it? There was a time growing up in Ireland when you had RTE1 and RTE2, and if you were lucky, you had HTV Wales and you had BBC One. That's what you got. Gone with the Wind was often a matinee movie that you would watch. And of course, as a child, it would bore the piss out of you as a child. Very famous film. It's, of course, set during the American Civil War. And it gets attacked because of its depiction of slavery, because it depicts happy slaves. Slaves that are happy with their lot in life, and people don't like it. It won 10 Oscars, hugely successful, as I said, and Hattie McDaniel was the first black actress to be nominated for an Oscar and the first black actress to win one. She played the domestic servant, Mammy. I know you've probably seen it 500 times if you're my age or above. So that's big today. And also Little Britain has been removed from BBC iPlayer, Netflix and BritBox because of some objections about the show. Little Britain, some of you won't know what it is. In the early 2000s to mid-2000s, a new comedy sketch show emerged featuring Matt Lucas and David Walliams. And the show was basically a series of sketches. Sometimes it was hysterically funny, other times it was a bit weak, but it was very successful. Apparently, though, it's annoying some people, even to this day, because there were some characters portrayed by the white Walliams and the white Lucas in blackface. So there were black characters in the show portrayed by the two comedians who blacked up, and it's not good. So the BBC said, right, that's it, it's gone. Times have changed since Little Britain first aired, so it will no longer be available on BBC iPlayer, said the BBC. Bit mad, Ted. Blackface. Here's a snip from Little Britain. Apparently one of the more offensive episodes. It's set, this little sketch you will hear is set in a traditional English church in an affluent area. The vicar, who's white, and everybody else in the church, the congregation, is white. The vicar says there is a pastor here from the US, Pastor Jesse King. He's black, but he's played by the white Matt Lucas in blackface. And apparently this is very offensive.
Christianity is one of the most popular religions in Britain, with over 80 members.
Please be seated. Now, as you know, the Reverend Hartley is on an exchange trip to Harlem in New York. So they've sent their reverend here to take the service this week. Now, I imagine he's a little nervous, so I want you all to make him feel very welcome. His name is Reverend Jesse King.
Hallelujah! I is from the ghetto. You is from the ghetto. We is all from the ghetto. So how we gonna get out of the ghetto? I tell you how we's gonna get out of the ghetto. We is gonna fight the power. Fight the power. Fight the power. What we gonna do, Mama?
Fight the power, perhaps?
Pray the Lord.
So it's ridiculous, right? It's farce. It's farce. A flamboyant, extroverted, very loud black preacher is foisted on a middle-class congregation somewhere in Middle England to preach to them. And Matt Lucas, because he's a brilliant mimic, plays the preacher. And to do that, he darkens the colour of his skin because otherwise it wouldn't work. But apparently it's offensive. And it's racist and it's hateful. And it hurts people. So it's gone now. Right? This blackface thing, we've discussed this before, and I always get into a little bit of trouble. I get a few abusive emails, but I don't mind. Blackface. When I think back to when I was, let's say 10 years of age. 10 is a good age to reflect. Think back to when you were 10. What did you like when you were 10? Think now. Well, I loved sport. Loved it. Every sport you could think of, you could imagine. I loved it. I watched it on telly as much as you could back then. And I loved the A-team. Right? We had the A-team in Ireland. George Peppard and Mr. T, of course, and Dirk Benedict, of course. So I loved Mr. T. Massive hero, Mr. T. And Daley Thompson was a massive hero of mine. I'll never forget watching the Olympics in 1984. I was in Cardiff at my uncle's flat in Cardiff. Honest to Jesus. His flat used to overlook the old Cardiff Arms Park. And we ran around Cardiff for nearly a month in the summer of 84 while the Olympics was on in Los Angeles. And we were allowed to stay up really late to watch it. Because obviously Los Angeles is 8 hours behind the UK time-wise. And I loved Daley Thompson. Loved him. I wanted the vest that he wore, that vest. And his manly moustache. Daley Thompson's a black athlete, bit of a genius. And I've talked about this before. How could I go to a fancy dress party dressed as Mr. T or Daley Thompson unless I was to get some makeup and to darken my skin? But apparently not, because if I was to do that, I would be an unapologetic, unashamed racist. Because some black person might get really offended by that. Anyway. So the media loved it today, talking about Gone with the Wind and Little Britain. They wallowed in it. Let's hear some opinions. Shakina Johnson is a freelance journalist and a black woman. And her byline has appeared in The Guardian, in The Independent, and in The Metro, amongst others. She's done okay. We'll come to Little Britain in a moment. She is asked on Radio 5 Live this morning, does she want more statues to come down? Do you want more statues to come down, love?
I would like to see any statues of previous historical figures who, were involved in the oppression of black people taken down. Absolutely.
They all were.
Then they all deserve to come down. I mean...
Monarchs, yeah?
Yes. I personally believe that they do. I mean... You probably don't. Other people probably do. But I personally do. Because, to be quite honest with you, I think it's quite offensive to have statues of, regardless of all the good things that these, people so-called did.
Regardless of all the good things that they might have done, some of these people. Keep this in mind.
The history is the important part here. And, me, I'm black. I personally take offence to, seeing a statue of Edward Cole. I was quite happy, to be honest, when the Edward Colston statue came down.
It's a conscious choice, isn't it, to take offence? I've learned this. Anybody who has ever worked, ask somebody like Jean Ann Crowley. Ask an actress who has appeared in major motion pictures about taking offence. You choose to. From the point of view of an actress or an actor, you choose to take offence at somebody's opinion of you. Don't you? I'd say after a while, experienced thespians just stopped reading the reviews or read them and just stopped giving an arse as to what they said. Taking offence is a conscious decision. It's not subconscious. It's not like pain, like physical pain. If I go up and slap somebody across the face, which I wouldn't do, that's pain. But offense is a subjective, it's a conscious thing. I'm going to take it. I'm going to be offended by that. And nobody wants to talk about this today. It's a conscious thing. There was a guy, I didn't even record it. I couldn't be bothered. There was some black guy somewhere in the UK today, somewhere in the Midlands, and he was actually complaining to a Sky News reporter that he had to walk past every day on his way to work a bust of some guy that was apparently a bit of a racist. And I've had to put up with this for years, he said. For years I've had to walk. And I was dying for the reporter to say, well, why don't you just go another way to work? You could actually cut down that alley and then just turn around there. And you wouldn't have to see the thing. You snowflake. Anyway, she goes on.
Didn't really see anything wrong with it. The defacing of Churchill, didn't really see anything wrong with that. I personally do not understand the point of why we are giving these people who have done bad things statues. But
the statues haven't done anything. It's just a statue, isn't it? I can take the argument with some of the slavers that we do, I don't want to say rewrite now, because some of you will say, oh, you mean rewrite history? No, but if you've got some bloke and he was heavily involved in the slave trade and his little plaque says that he was a great guy, well, we know he wasn't, so you could change the plaque a bit, right? We're in a bad place, aren't we?
I don't get, there's so many people that have done so many great things. Why don't they have statues?
Yeah, why don't they have statues? The people who've done good things. Well, they do. The country is littered with statues of people who've done noble things. So regardless of any good that Winston Churchill did, statues should come down. Now, on Little Britain, you will hear Martin Daubney in a moment too. Martin Daubney is a former Brexit Party MEP. He's on the call with Shekinah Johnson. He's a white dude. I guess she would see him as a bit of a gammon because he's a middle-aged white dude who supports Brexit. He's on the call as well. You will hear him in a moment. So what does this black journalist then think about Little Britain being 86th by the BBC? I think it's Nikki Campbell asking the question.
Because it's so interesting, Little Britain being removed from Iplayer and from Netflix and from BritBox as well. Yeah, your thoughts on that?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I was beyond pleased with that because...
Beyond pleased? What did you think when you heard last night that Little Britain was taken off BBC iPlayer? Well, I was beyond pleased. At a party. Wonderful.
Because for years I felt that
For years.
was honestly one of the most offensive shows in British television. I mean, racism is racism. It doesn't matter how you choose to sugarcoat it, Little Britain, Come Fly With Me, Bo Selector, they all exhibited racist content, poking fun at black people.
Poking fun at black people and at black celebrities? Are you not allowed to poke fun at black people? But historically... And even today, even in modern times, there are plenty of black men and women whom have given us very good reason to poke fun at them. You're not surely saying that we can't make fun of black people.
This content, poking fun at black people, black celebrities, black culture.
Why not? If you find something funny or ridiculous about black culture, why not take the piss out of it? Why not? Mother of divine Jesus, why not? And Campbell is useless, isn't he? He should be jumping in there. What's wrong with taking the piss out of black celebrities? Michael Jackson and others. What's wrong with that?
The hands of white comedians with white privilege. I mean,
white comedians with white privilege are not allowed to make fun of black celebrities. Right, okay.
I mean, if you listen to Lee Francis's apology, he literally says, nobody said anything to me, so I didn't think anything of it. And clearly now,
Yes, because when Bo Selecta was on television, not a single black person of influence said, oh, by the way, that Bo Selecta is a bit racist, because it wasn't. It was farce. The French, one of the things the French gave to us, the French have given us very many things of great quality. Their cheeses, their wines, of course, their culture, their beautiful language. But they gave us farce. Bo Selecta was fucking farce. It was ridiculous. He was made up to look nothing like Michael Jackson or Oprah Winfrey. Who was offended by it back in the day? Nobody, because it wasn't offensive. It was funny.
As I put in my article in Metro, I feel like from his apology, his white guilt was coming through.
White guilt.
Coming through. Okay, we're in the climate where everybody's, talking about Black Lives Matter and, the injustices of black people. And all of a sudden, after 18 years of Bo Selecta being on television, he suddenly realises that it was offensive. I mean, blackface is connected to a history that involved dehumanising and disenfranchising black people, and it depicts, violent, offensive, and incorrect stereotypes of black people.
She's nearly crying there. She's that emotional about it, and that's, I suppose, to her credit, that at least she means this bullshit, because it is monumental bollocks. This, it really is. That when Matt Lucas darkened the colour of his skin to imitate the hysterical preacher from Harlem, that he was somehow being racist. No, he wasn't. He had an idea. He had a funny idea. He thought to himself, I wonder if you got a stiff upper lip, hoity-toity, okay, boring as arseholes, Middle England church with a vicar, and you sprang a praise Jesus preacher on them, that might be funny. Let's explore that. That's what he did. Nothing racist about it. There wasn't then, there isn't now. What are we going to do?
Which aren't true. Yeah. And they deserve, that show deserved to be removed.
Isn't it funny how just a few...
This is Martin Daubney. He's the gammon. He's the Brexit supporting guy. Middle-aged. He's there to properly put the wind up her skirt.
Just a few years ago, we were all Je suis Charlie. We all stood in unity around the world about the Charlie Hebdo cartoon, protecting the freedom of speech and the rights of journalists and cartoonists and satirists and comedians to defend free speech. Well, you think it was okay that cartoonists were murdered for doing offensive cartoons? Is that your position on this?
Look, I personally think that
he's tied her up in knots there now, hasn't he?
What I'm saying,
if you want to feature black characters in your show, hire black actors. It's not that hard. Little Britain used blackface, and for years they got away with it because
they got away with it.
Only black people. It's not only black people that have had the Mickey take at them historically in comedy. I'm a northerner. I've had the Mickey rip at me for years. But the point is if a few people decide what the rest of us are allowed to watch, that is not a healthy society.
No, it isn't. It's beyond dangerous. There are so many adjectives we could use to describe it. It is terrifying. It is modern day, latter day book burning. I said this on Facebook last night. If you don't like it, if it offends your delicate sensibilities, don't fucking watch it. Don't tell me that I can't watch it or that I need to be protected from it. Do you understand that? Because I know I have black listeners, and I know that some of you will agree with this nutcase, Shakina Johnson. Although, to be fair to her, she at least believes it. I have admiration for people, at least when they believe it. She's not virtue signalling. She's not earning her crust or her corn by using these positions. She actually means it. She was trembling at one stage, God love her. By all means, don't watch it and tell your children that they should avoid it because some bloke pretended to be a wild-eyed minister from Harlem. By all means, but don't fucking tell me I can't watch it or that it needs to be banned. Unbelievable how dangerous this is. And it's dangerous because it's winning. This is winning this, this idea. This is an idea whose time has come. It's happening every day of the week. Cancelled, gone, removed. What? Because it back in the 70s, there was a racial slur in one of the episodes. Wow. Let's stay with Nicky Campbell for a minute, will we? What a wretched, virtue-signalling, snivelling little toad Nicky Campbell is. We've had loads of fun with Nicky over the years. Remember that time that Nicky Campbell said with a straight face is that he always looks out for Britney Spears? Do you remember that? We made great merriment taking the piss out of that one. He never misses an opportunity to alert his audience to his worthiness and to his wokeness. And there was a lovely example of it today. Listen to Nicky Campbell.
Lots of texts are coming in about the fact that BBC has axed Little Britain from the Iplayer service and also Netflix, and that was part of our lively and pretty animated conversation earlier on that we were having between Shakina Johnson, the freelance journalist, and Martin Daubney. She said it should never have been commissioned in the first place, and lots of talk, Rachel, about statues up and down the country.
Yeah.
Big issue about Sir Robert Peel in Manchester as well. He was Prime Minister, wasn't he? And he's the founder of the modern police service and the concept of policing by consent. So there's big rows all over. But there was a notorious comedy called Love Thy Neighbour in the 1970s, which was based on the premise of this white guy who's quite bigoted, and had a black neighbour. And you watch it now if you can get hold of it and see it. I've not made a great effort to do that, but I remember some of it. And it's just, what? Oh my God, what? It's like when you see the black and white minstrel show, which you can still see on YouTube. You see them on Saturday night telly. You can still see it on YouTube. Dancers, singers, so the white women and the men were, black minstrels all blacking up. And it's just astonishing to see it. Things move on. Things change, Rachel.
Things change, Rachel. Nice bit of mansplaining to Rachel at the end there. Unbelievable bollocks. I mean, that's what passes as presenting on the BBC today. A few minutes later, he was talking to the actress Rhea Bailey. That's right, Rhea Bailey of Coronation Street fame. And she brings up the new Netflix show Hollywood, which I think is fiction based on some facts. A lot of people seem to like it. And it deals with the actress Hattie McDaniel in one or two of the episodes. So you'll hear Rhea Bailey explain this, and then you'll hear Nicky Campbell's comments. It's a thing of beauty.
It's a TV show that looks at Hollywood in the 50s and how you had to get ahead to be a famous actor in that time. And Hattie McDaniel actually features in 2 episodes. And they cover her story briefly about the fact that she wasn't allowed to sit on the front row.
No, I said that,
she was told to sit.
I said that, yeah, I said that. Sit
at the back and then ushered forward to the front just to pick up her award and then get back out of people's sight and view. So that to me...
Miss the skin crawl.
Yeah, and that to me paid more respect to her and her performance in that film than the film itself.
What was that?
So that to
Miss
me...
the skin crawl.
Makes his skin crawl.
So that to
Miss
me...
the skin crawl.
Makes his skin crawl. I'd have more respect if he just told the truth and just said, I didn't give a shit, really. But when you saw that old clip of the Oscars, Richie, and Hattie McDaniel was brought forward to get her Oscar, and then she was sent back to the very back of the auditorium, how did that make you feel? I couldn't give a shit, really, to be honest. And I'm not saying that I don't or didn't give a shit. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'd have more respect if he was to be honest enough to say that. We will be back in a second with more. It's 18 minutes to the top of the hour.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbyersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Welcome back to the program. Newsflash. We should have a teleprompter, a teleprinter, shouldn't we? Newsflash. People living alone in England will be able to stay at one other household as part of a further easing of corona restrictions. Yes, single people can now stay the night with loved ones. This was announced a short time ago by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Here he is on the BBC.
Still too many people, particularly those who live by themselves, who are lonely and struggling with being unable to see friends and family. So from this weekend, we will allow single adult households, adults living alone or single parents with children under 18, to form a support bubble. A support bubble.
Now.
With one other household. All those in a support bubble will be able to act as if they live in the same household.
Now you can act if you so choose, as if you live in the same household as part of the support bubble. This makes a lot of sense to me, this.
Meaning they can spend time together inside each other's homes
and beds
and do not need to stay 2 meters apart. I want to stress that support bubbles must be exclusive, meaning you can't switch the household you are in a bubble with or connect with multiple households.
We should be ashamed of our lives. Me and you should be ashamed of our lives that we've put up with this fucking bullshit. Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we go to bed tonight in shame, hanging our fucking heads that we would allow ourselves to be spoken to by a wild-haired fucking goon like him, telling us who you can and can't sleep with, when you can or you can't go to another house. How did we ever let it come to this, eh? While you ponder that, let's hear what else he had to say.
And if any member of the support bubble develops symptoms, all members of the bubble will need to follow the normal advice on household isolation. We're making this change to support those who are particularly lonely as a result of lockdown measures.
By lonely, he means horny.
A targeted intervention to limit the most harmful effects of the current social restrictions. It is emphatically not designed for people who don't qualify to start meeting inside other people's homes, because that remains against the law. Unfortunately, we cannot advise anyone who is shielding to form a support bubble at this stage.
What the fuck does any of this even mean? Right, okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, so you can stay the night with loved ones from now on. I'm doing the mathematics on my finger. Do you do that as well? The oft-mentioned future, Mrs. Allen, often takes the piss out of me because I add up on my fingers. Do you do that as well? You hold your hands out and you add up on your fingers. I'm doing the mathematics now. In July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Next March, there'll be 3.5 million children born in the UK next March. Yeah. The sex will be great in the coming days and weeks. I say again, how have we allowed ourselves to be so to be submitted to this crap from idiots like him? And I'm not going to swear again. That goon living next door to him, that Rishi Sunak, what a goon! Yeah, it'll be brilliant shopping next week. You'll have to go in. Every 5 meters there'll be a fucking hand washing station. You'll have to wash your fucking hands. You'll have to make sure that you're nowhere near anybody else. If you try on a pair of shoes, you might get a fucking smack in the face from the woman behind you, because she won't be able to try them on, because the shoes will have to be quarantined for 24 hours. Everywhere you go, there'll be people wearing visors and masks. You won't be able to understand them. It's hard enough to understand me anyway with my accent without me wearing a mask. The shop assistant won't have a fucking clue what I'm saying. Hey? How did we allow it? Why do we put up with it? It's just scandalous, isn't it? Eh? There's some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to finish with this Little Britain thing. I know I'm segueing, I'm jumping different stools, tangents, going off in different directions. I came across a really interesting lady today called Dominique Samuels. She's in Manchester, is Dominique, and she is a woman of colour. And she's also the president of Orthodox Conservatives. And she was on Sky News today, and she's not happy that Little Britain is being axed. And far more eloquently than me, or than I did, she explains brilliantly why we should be worried about the disappearing of television shows that are harmless. Dominique Samuels, Manchester, born and bred, woman of colour. Here she is.
Well, in my opinion, it's completely ridiculous, because what this is doing, it's attempting to erase history. The black woman who was actually in Gone with the Wind was actually the first black woman to actually win an Oscar. You can't delete bits of history you don't like because they might be remotely offensive. And I think this ties back to a wider point about what's going on with comedy. For example, Little Britain. Little Britain depicted everybody in a way that we could take the mick out of. White people, brown people, black people. So I wish we'd stop going on like black people can't handle comedy, because that's what it is. It's not designed to be politically correct. It's designed to be funny. If we can't take the mick out of each other and laugh at each other from time to time, what do we have left? We don't have freedom of speech and we don't have freedom of expression. And it starts off with black people and blaming everything on racism, and then it ends with other things too. So, for example, the gender debate with comedians like Ricky Gervais, for example, it's actually censoring what people can and can't say. Comedy isn't supposed to be politically correct, so we need to stop trying to police what people can and can't say and what people can and can't do.
Okay.
Yeah, she was brilliant. What's been happening, and I've talked about this for some years, in my opinion, there is an agenda to infantilise every adult man and woman on planet Earth, to infantilise us. It's a rotten thing. It's psychological warfare that is being, it's an operation targeted against all of us, every man and woman, and it's been going on for years. To gaslight us in some ways, but ultimately to infantilise us. To get us into a place whereby we no longer dare to think for ourselves. Where we no longer dare to objectively have a look at something and form our own conclusion based on our own life experience and our own ability intellectually to reach a conclusion and an opinion. Where we always look to the state for guidance on what it is okay to say and to do, and on what's not okay to say and to do. And it's not just in entertainment and comedy, it's right across the board. Everywhere you look in our media, not just in the UK and Ireland, but in the United States, in Australia, everywhere you look, it's a targeted campaign to convince people that we're not capable of thinking or even feeling for ourselves. And a big part of this is this mental health awareness campaign that's been running non-stop now for several years. And we saw quite a bit of it again today. Right across the media today. I've been watching it, ITV, Sky News, the BBC. You have celebrities talking on programmes about how they have decided to speak up about their own mental health problems. And that they decided to do that because they believe that it will benefit other people who are maybe reluctant to speak out about their mental health problems. It's a huge agenda, this, and it was everywhere today. Kay Burley this morning on Sky News interviewed Alistair Campbell. Now, you'll know who he is, Tony Blair's spin doctor and accessory to mass murder. Alistair Campbell, the very same. And apparently he's got loads of mental health problems and depression issues. And he was due to have a book out around about now, but the book has been delayed because of, well, coronavirus, of course. Maybe murdering millions of people and displacing millions more and then lying about it, maybe Alistair. Don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe that's a reasonable reason to be suffering with mental health problems. Anyway, he's talking about it with Kay Burley, and it tickled me because while he was talking to Kay Burley about it, I heard something and I spat my orange juice all over the place. It was that funny. Alistair Campbell and Kay Burley.
I was talking to a guy he's actually a sports psychologist, but he was saying that for a lot of people like me now working at home, is actually having, this is so simple it's ridiculous, having a different cup that you use when you are working. I would say that at the moment I'm upstairs in my office at the top of the house working, having a different cup if you have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And I actually find that it's so trivial, but actually when I go down to the kitchen and make a cup of tea, if I'm working, it's a different cup, tiny thing. For me, I've been saying to people that I actually find that music has become an incredibly important thing to me, listening to music and playing music. And those sorts of things. And even things like learning. I mean, I used to speak fluent German and I've lost a lot of my German. So I'm now doing a German course to try and brush up my German. All sorts of these things. So I'm going to be talking to different people about that sort of thing.
What about
and
structure,
then sort of bringing
Alistair?
them together.
What about structure? I've found that
Wait for this.
Going for a walk at the same time every day has helped me. And also, I used to play the guitar. I've not been playing it very much, but I make sure that I spend 15 minutes every day at the same time playing my guitar. Do you find that stuff like that helps if you have sort of, anchor points, if you will?
Yeah, he says, yeah. What was that?
But I make sure that I spend 15 minutes every day at the same time playing my guitar.
Again?
But I make sure that I spend 15 minutes every day at the same time playing my guitar.
What kind of fuckery is this?
Yeah, Kay plays the guitar. Now, if you'd have said to me, Richie, I'll give you 500,000 guesses that a UK media personality plays the guitar in their spare time, I'll give you 500,000 guesses. I wouldn't have said Kay Burley. But apparently Kay has an Instagram account and she puts videos on there, and on some of these videos she plays the guitar and she's not bad at all. Have a listen. Yeah, that's Kay playing even Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, third movement, I believe, on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Let's have some music from Rod Stewart. When we come back, we're going to briefly talk about education, and then we'll be wrapping up, I think, for Wednesday. Right, welcome back to the programme. Welcome back. It's 6 o'clock. More or less, it's about 30 seconds to 6 o'clock. It is the Richie Allen Radio Show, of course, live from Salford in Greater Manchester. Yes. Yes, it was a weak gag. The K gag, I know. It was a weak gag. It did make me laugh, though, when she came out with guitar. I thought, Christ, no. But there you are. That's my prejudice, isn't it? That's my prejudice, yeah. That's my misogyny. That is. I heard a soundbite this morning that I thought was very interesting because of where all of this is going. Now, if you were listening to the programme last week, and I'm sure you were, you would have heard me speaking with John Jake Klysek of schoolworldorder.info. That's the website. If you haven't checked it out, do check it out, schoolworldorder.info. John Jake Klysek goes by the name of Jake, and a gentleman and a scholar. He's a lecturer, college professor, teacher. He's into mixed martial arts as well, looks after himself. Lovely bloke. Brilliant discussion with him. Anyway, his book, School World Order, about the technocratic globalization of corporatized education, is where he basically explores how corporations have taken over education in America, how they have managed to do that, and how it's happened and is happening here through the academization of schools here in the UK. And where all of that is leading ultimately is basically it's leading to virtual schooling. Children learning at home through, probably initially through laptops or tablets, smartphones, but ultimately through virtual reality and implantables. This is a fact. It's not one of these wacky conspiracy theories. It's a fact. It's where it's all going. And I was listening to BBC. You know, I've got them all on here during the day. You know, Simon McCoy in the afternoon, Radio 4 in the morning, Radio 5 in the morning, K, of course, and Sky and all the rest of it. And children staying at home. And the face of education changing in England. This was being discussed. And a woman called Mary Bousted from the National Education Union was on BBC Radio 5 Live. And when she was talking about how education will change, you couldn't but think, I couldn't help but think back to my conversation with John Jake Kleisek. And here it is. You know, again, your friends and some of your neighbours will chastise you for listening to the independent media or for sharing something with them on Facebook. You know, I often talk to Jean Ann about this. You know, Jean Ann will link to something, sometimes on this programme, but often on other programmes. Something that tickled her fancy or something that made her think. And she will show it on her Facebook page. And some of her oldest and dearest friends will be sometimes a bit condescending in dismissing the information. And of course, the tragic thing about that is all of this stuff is in plain sight if you want to look for it. So when people say do your own research, it's become a bit of a cliche. I know that. And I know that some of your friends and neighbours, they don't like to be told to do your own research. So I say to people, look, don't believe me that they want children to be ultimately learning in a virtual reality box or headset, and that ultimately they want the children to be implanted. Don't believe me. I wouldn't say do your own research. I would say, look, listen to what the National Education Union is saying about where education needs to go. And here's Mary Bousted on the BBC today. This is fairly sobering stuff, this.
I do think, however, that we now really need to start thinking about a national plan for education. We don't know how long the virus is going to be with us. We don't know whether there's going to be a second spike. There's likely to be local spikes. So we need to start thinking about how do we educate our children, because we can't keep them in lockdown forever.
Quite.
And that's going to require real investment in more places for children to learn, getting more teachers back in the profession so we can teach smaller classes.
Now, it's going to require more investment, she said, in new places, more places for children to learn. That investment will not come from government, because your government is going to tell you, we're broke, Paddy. We're broke. We've got nothing. In fact, we're so broke, we're going to have to take some of your savings. So it won't come from government. It's going to come from the private sector. Okay, we've got that.
And a national plan for blended learning at home and at
blended learning. Don't you love these phrases? Don't you want to just scream and scream until you break your windows? Because you have to let that rage out of your body. Because if you don't, you might get violent. Violence is wrong. There's never any excuse for it except in self-defense. Justification only in self-defense. I could throttle the totally inept Rachel Burden, the presenter at this time, for not stopping Mary and saying, what the fuck is blended learning? What's that about? That sounds like a load of bollocks to me. But she doesn't.
And a national plan for blended learning.
Blended learning.
Learning at home and at school.
Blended learning.
At home and at school. And ultimately, finally, at home. Eh?
Phrase of the moment, isn't it? We've heard a lot about it, which
Yeah.
effectively means a combination of online learning, remote learning, and
Remote learning, online learning, yes.
and face-to-face learning, as I understand it.
And the face-to-face learning will be phased out.
700,000.
Because you will be instructed by, as John Jake Kleisek said on the radio show, and this guy's a genius, and everything he's written about is backed up by hard data and solid evidence. Eventually, it will be artificial intelligence. Yes, it will be a self-learning, conscious, artificial intelligence thing that will be instructing your children on what they should be thinking and what they should be reading, what they should know and what they shouldn't know. Libraries will be a thing of the past. There won't be any. A child will never again have the pleasure that I had on Browns Road in Waterford City, Lisduggan, when I would walk down the road from Belvedere Drive to my library, where there were thousands of books. That lovely smell of those books. And the lovely librarian that we had for years, whose name escapes me now, it's pissing me right off. Lovely lady with black curly hair and glasses, matronly but beautiful and friendly. The smell of the books and being allowed to take home 3 books every 2 weeks. Thing of the past. Gone. Blended learning. No opposition to it. BBC, no. Question it. Ask her, is this fucking crazy? No. No, you're there merely to amplify what she's saying, not to challenge it. Not to say, well, what impact will this have on the development of children, Mary, while we have you? Love, you know. No, this is good.
Some children in the UK have no internet access.
So now she's complaining that too many children don't have internet access. And they need to have it so that we can give them this experience going forward.
So they're not able to access Zoom and other internet. They have to rely on the work that state schools are doing to provide other forms of learning for them. Creative boxes, memory boxes. State schools have to educate many more children. The classes are much larger, and many children live in households where they don't have internet access, or it's much more difficult for them to get onto the computer because there aren't that many computers in the house. They don't have them on their own. So state schools have had to be very inventive in the way that they approach supporting children learning at home. They are not educating many children who will get access to the electronic and the internet devices which they need in order to access that type of learning. So they've had to look at other possibilities.
And the private sector is like an able seaman who learns, having been at sea for 3 months, that there is a wren on board because she got on board at Portsmouth. He could chew his way through a metal bulkhead to get to the wren. So Randy is the able seaman. And that is where the private sector is here. It cannot effing wait to get involved and to supply the hardware and the software to imprison the minds of our children going forward.
Possibilities. About the attainment gap, that's exactly why now we have to look to equalise provision, and that's why the government has to get a plan which does not rely on just one version of all children will go back to school in September and it will just be as it was before, because we don't know what the situation will be like in September. We don't know how we don't know how schools will operate. So we need now to be planning about more spaces where schooling can take place, where children in smaller numbers, and actually
more spaces where learning can take place.
Actually, for those disadvantaged children, 700,000 who don't have access to the internet, we need free laptops and free internet access so they can access that learning at home.
This is where it's going, you see, and the virus is the excuse for this, as it is the excuse for so many other planned transformations of the way we live. The virus is the excuse to change human experience on planet Earth. The way we interact with one another. The way we have congregated, assembled, worked, taught our children, socialized. The virus is the excuse. And that's why I get asked all the time, what you think, Richie? And I'm never dogmatic because I don't know. But my best guess would be that whatever the virus is, because I do agree with Vernon Coleman, something nasty was going around in the earlier part of this year. I believe the virus is manufactured. I don't care what name they've given it. And I believe the virus is the excuse to do what is being proposed day in and day out on our TV and radio programs. This is a horror story, this. Let's get children. Ultimately, we're going to have to accept, she says, and other educators are saying, that in the near future, we'll have to have lots more places of learning and blended learning. Sometime with an educator, but most of the time, learning online at home. Blended learning. It's astonishing stuff. Isn't it? Right. John Rappaport will be among the guests on the Richie Allen radio show tomorrow. I had a guest lined up today, but cried off late on. I think the person was put off coming on by some of the stuff that's been said about this programme by so-called anti-racist groups. I'm not saying too much now. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. But anyway, we'll see how it goes tomorrow. So I'm out of here now. I'll be back with you tomorrow at 5 o'clock UK time. Thanks for listening today. I really appreciate it. Going out with John Denver. Am I? No, I'm going out with Rod Stewart again. I'm having one of those days, I'm telling you. Going out with John Denver. And we're back again tomorrow at 5 o'clock with John Rappaport. And other guests as well.